Oskar Schindler, The Men Who Bought Lives Part I, A Businessman in a World of Death, Krakow, Poland, September 1939. The city fell quickly. German tanks rolled through the streets of Krakow under fluttering red banners, steel tracks grinding against cobblestones that had known centuries of peace. Civilians watched from behind windows and doorways as soldiers marched past, boots striking in perfect rhythm. Among the crowd stood a man in a tailored coat, cigarette between his fingers, eyes calculating. Oskar Schindler. He was not a hero, not yet, not even close. He was a businessman, an opportunist, a man who smelled profit in chaos, and war, he believed, was the greatest opportunity of all. 1. A man who loved luxury. Oskar Schindler loved fine suits, expensive alcohol, and beautiful women. He enjoyed laughter, attention, and the feeling of being admired. Before the war, he had failed at several ventures, always chasing success but never quite catching it. Now, everything had changed. Poland was occupied, factories were being seized, Jewish businesses were being shut down, labor was becoming cheap. Schindler adjusted his tie and smiled. This war, he told a German officer over brandy one night, will make men rich. The smart ones, at least. The officer laughed. Then you are in the right place, Herr Schindler. Schindler joined the Nazi Party not out of ideology, but convenience. A membership card opened doors. It brought protection. It brought contracts, and contracts brought money. 2. The factory with German backing and Jewish capital confiscated by the Reich, Schindler acquired an enamelware factory, Deutsche Emalwaren Fabrik, known simply as Emalia, pots, pans, mess kits, nothing glamorous but necessary for the war effort. His workforce came mostly from the Jewish population of Krakow, men and women forced into labor under brutal conditions. They arrived thin, frightened, and silent. Schindler watched them work from his office window. They work hard, he remarked casually to Itzhak Stern, a Jewish accountant assigned to assist him. They work because they must, Stern replied quietly. Schindler waved a dismissive hand. Work is work. At least here, they eat. Stern said nothing, but he watched Schindler closely, because beneath the charm and greed, something in the men didn't quite fit the uniform he wore. 3. The ghetto in 1941, the Krakow ghetto was sealed, walls rose, barbed wire appeared, families were crushed into cramped apartments, hunger became routine. Schindler walked through the ghetto once, escorted by SS guards. The smell hit him first, sewage, sickness, fear. Children stared at him with hollow eyes. A woman collapsed in the street, too weak to stand. A guard kicked her aside without slowing his pace. Schindler stopped. Is that necessary? He asked lightly. The guard shrugged. They're Jews. Schindler nodded, but his smile faded. That night, he drank more than usual. 4. The commandant. Everything changed when Amon Goth arrived. The new commandant of Plasso concentration camp was tall, brutal, and unpredictable. He shot prisoners from his balcony for sport. He ruled with terror, and he enjoyed it. Schindler met him over drinks. You know, Goth said casually, loading a pistol, power is when we have every justification to kill, and choose not to. Schindler studied him. That's restraint, he said. Goth laughed. No. Restraint is weakness. Power is pulling the trigger and knowing no one will stop you. Schindler forced a smile, but something inside him recoiled. 5. The girl in the red coat. One day, during the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto, Schindler watched from horseback alongside other German officers. Gunshots echoed, people ran, screams filled the air. Then he saw her. A small girl, wearing a red coat, walking alone through the chaos. She moved slowly, confused, unnoticed. Hours later, he saw the same red coat, lying still among bodies. That night, Schindler couldn't sleep. For the first time, the war stopped being abstract. It had a face, and it was a child's. 6. A shift begins. Schindler began to spend more money than necessary. Better food for workers, medical care, bribes to SS officers, excuses, lies, paperwork. When Stern asked him why, Schindler snapped, because I can. But later, quieter, he added, if they're here, they work. If they work, they live. Stern looked at him. You're protecting them. Schindler avoided his gaze. I'm protecting my investment. But they both knew that wasn't the whole truth anymore. 7. The cost of humanity. By 1943, Plasso became a death factory. Executions, deportations, mass graves. Schindler watched his workers march back and forth each day and realized a simple truth: if he did nothing, they would die. Not tomorrow, not next year, soon. That night, he told Stern, "Make a list." Stern looked up sharply. "A list of what?" "Of names," Schindler said. "Everyone who works for me. Everyone we can justify." Stern's hands trembled. "You know what this means?" Schindler nodded. "I know." He lit a cigarette, inhaled deeply. "This is where it gets expensive." Oskar Schindler, Part 2. The list that meant life. Krakow, Poland, 1943. The factory no longer sounded like a factory. It sounded like a shelter. Metal presses still hammered steel, machines still rattled, but beneath the noise lived something else: fear held together by hope. For the Jewish workers inside, Schindler's factory was no longer a workplace. It was the difference between life and death. Oskar Schindler stood on the factory floor, cigarette between his fingers, watching men and women move with mechanical precision. They were thin now. Too thin. Their eyes followed every SS boot that crossed the doorway behind him. Itzhak Stern spoke quietly. "They closed another ghetto this morning." Schindler exhaled smoke slowly. "Which one?" "Bochnia." Schindler cursed under his breath. "That means Plasso will overflow." They both knew what that meant: more executions, more selections, more smoke rising from the hills. 1. The monster of Plasso. Commandant Amon Goth ruled the Plasso labor camp like a god of death. He shot prisoners from his balcony for sport. He had people killed for walking too slowly, for looking at him wrong, for existing. Schindler visited Goth often, dressed well, smiling, offering gifts, liquor, cigarettes, money. 1 afternoon, Goth leaned against the balcony railing, rifle in hand. "Watch this," Goth said casually. He aimed. A shot cracked through the air. A man below collapsed. Goth laughed. Schindler didn't flinch. Didn't react. Didn't look away. Inside, something twisted violently, but he showed nothing. "You're wasting workers," Schindler said lightly. Goth smirked. "I have thousands." Schindler took a slow step closer, but not skilled ones, and Berlin wants production numbers. Goth paused. Schindler pressed the advantage. "My workers don't come from the camp anymore, they stay in the factory. No transport. No delays." Goth lowered the rifle. "You're getting soft, Oskar." Schindler smiled. "Or profitable." Goth laughed and slapped him on the back, and just like that, another dozen lives were spared. 2. When the children disappeared in March 1943, the liquidation began. Schindler watched from a hillside as SS units stormed the Krakow ghetto. Screams echoed between buildings. Children were dragged from hiding places. Old people were shot where they stood. A girl ran through the street holding a red coat. Schindler saw her fall. That night, he drank alone. The factory lights burned late. Workers whispered. They took the children. They took everyone. Stern found Schindler sitting in his office, bottle empty. "You can't save them all," Stern said gently. Schindler slammed his fist into the desk. "I know." Then, quieter, "But I can save some." From that night on, the factory became a lie. Shells that didn't explode, ammunition that failed inspections, machines breaking conveniently. Berlin complained. Schindler bribed harder. 3. The list: the Red Army was coming. Plasso was to be closed. All prisoners transferred to Auschwitz. Death, certain death. Schindler went to Goth one last time. "I need my workers," he said calmly. Goth raised an eyebrow. "They're Jews. They're specialists." Goth shrugged. "Make me a list." And so it began. Names, hundreds of them, men, women, old, young. Each name meant survival, each omission meant death. Schindler and Stern worked through the night. Stern's hands shook as he typed. "Oskar, this one has no skills." Schindler didn't look up. "He does now." "What about her?" "She's essential. They'll notice." Schindler leaned forward. "They notice money." By dawn, the list was complete. 1 200 names. 1 200 lives. 4 Almost lost. The women were sent to Auschwitz by mistake. For 3 days, Schindler fought like a madman. Bribes, threats, appeals. He stood inside Auschwitz, surrounded by smoke and screams, demanding his workers back. An SS officer laughed. No one leaves Auschwitz. Schindler placed diamonds on the table, accept them. Against all logic, all rules, all cruelty, the women were released. When they arrived at the factory, alive but broken, Schindler stood silently as they cried. One woman whispered, "He pulled us out of hell." 5. The end approaches. As Germany collapsed, Schindler sold everything, his money, his possessions, his future, all to keep his workers fed. When the war ended, he gathered them. "I am a member of the Nazi Party," he said. "I wore their badge." He broke. "I could have saved more." They stopped him. A ring was made from gold fillings. Inside it was engraved, "Whoever saves one life, saves the world entire." Schindler wept. Oskar Schindler, Part 3, The List That Meant Life, Krakow, late 1943, 1944. The factory no longer sounded like a place of profit. It sounded like a shelter. Inside the enamel were halls of Deutsche Emailwaren Fabrik. Machines rattled day and night, but the true work being done there was invisible to any ledger. Men and women moved with quiet urgency, eyes down, hands steady, not because they feared discipline, but because they understood something deeper. This building was the thin line between life and death, and Oskar Schindler knew it. 2.1. When Krakow became a grave, the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto changed everything. Schindler stood on a hill overlooking the city as gunfire echoed through the streets below. Screams carried on the wind. Smoke rose from burning buildings. SS troops moved methodically, dragging families from their homes. He saw bodies in the streets, children thrown onto trucks, old men beaten for walking too slowly, and then, something that burned itself into his memory forever. A little girl in a red coat, wandering alone through the chaos. She did not cry, she did not scream, she simply walked. Hours later, Schindler saw her again, this time, lifeless. That night, for the first time in his life, Oskar Schindler did not drink. He sat alone in his apartment, staring at nothing, and something inside him finally broke. 2. The rise of Amon Goth, new commandant of Plasso concentration camp. Amon Goth ruled like a god of cruelty. From his villa balcony, Goth shot prisoners at random, for walking too slowly, for standing too straight, for existing. Schindler knew Goth well. They drank together, laughed together, did business together. But now, each visit to Plasso felt like stepping into hell. Schindler watched as his workers were beaten, starved, executed. He confronted Goth one afternoon. "They work better when you don't terrorize them," Schindler said calmly. Goth laughed. "Power," he replied, "comes from fear." Schindler shook his head. "Power," he said quietly, "comes from mercy." Goth stared at him, then burst into laughter. "You're sentimental, Schindler." But from that day on, Schindler began to buy lives. 1 bribe at a time. 1 favor at a time. 1 bottle, 1 diamond, 1 promise. 3. The factory as a sanctuary. Schindler declared his factory an essential war facility. He demanded more Jewish workers, not because he needed them, but because he could protect them. Inside the factory, children were hidden among adults, the elderly were declared skilled, the sick were suddenly indispensable. Accountants falsified ages, clerks rewrote names, typists erased death sentences with ink. Schindler paid for everything. His fortune vanished. Bribes, food, medicine, black market supplies. Every mark he spent bought time, and time meant survival. 4. The list in 1944, the order came. Plasso was to be liquidated. The prisoners would be sent to Auschwitz. Schindler knew what that meant. Death. So he did the unthinkable. He proposed a new factory, in Brunlitz, in occupied Czechoslovakia, and demanded his workers be transferred with him. The SS agreed. For a price. Night after night, Schindler and his accountant Itzhak Stern sat at a desk, typing names. 1 by 1. Men, women, children, families. Each name was a gamble, each line was a life. Schindler paced the room, agitated. Add him. She's essential. Take him off. No, put him back. Stern looked at him. Oskar, we can't save everyone. Schindler slammed his fist on the table. This list, he said, voice breaking, is life. By dawn, it was done. 1. 200 names. 5. A mistake that nearly killed them all. The men arrived safely in Brunlitz. The women did not. Through a clerical error, they were sent to Auschwitz. Schindler lost control. He stormed into SS offices. He bribed. He screamed. He begged. He spent everything he had left. Weeks passed. Then, impossibly, The women arrived, alive, starving, broken but alive. When Schindler saw them step off the train, he turned away so they would not see him cry. 6. A factory that made nothing in Brunlitz. Schindler's factory produced nothing of value, shells that didn't work, machines that mysteriously failed. The war raged on, and his workers lived. 7. The end May 1945. Germany collapsed. Schindler gathered his workers one last time. Tomorrow, he said, you will be free. He looked at them, men and women who were alive because of him. I am a member of the Nazi Party, he said quietly, I must flee. They gave him a ring, engraved with words from the Talmud, whoever saves one life, saves the world entire. Schindler broke. I could have saved more, he whispered, this pin, this car. I could have sold them. Stern replied softly, you saved enough. Oskar Schindler, Part 4. The men who lost everything, and saved 1,200 lives. Germany, 1945. The war ended not with silence, but with confusion. Factories stood still, uniforms were burned, names disappeared overnight, and men who once held power ran like hunted animals. In the courtyard of his factory, Oskar Schindler stood facing the people he had protected for years. More than 1,000 men, women, and children, alive, thin, exhausted, traumatized, but alive. He had no uniform anymore. No authority. No protection. The Allies were coming, and for a man who had worn an SS pin and worked inside the Nazi system, survival was no longer guaranteed. Schindler removed his gold Nazi Party badge and held it up. This can buy me life, he said quietly. He placed it on the table, then his watch, his ring, his cufflinks, these too. Someone whispered, you could have saved more. The words hit him like a bullet. Schindler broke. I could have saved one more, he said, his voice cracking, one more person, and I didn't. For the first time since the war began, Oskar Schindler cried openly, not for money, not for power, but for human lives. That night, the people he saved wrote a letter that would follow him for the rest of his life. 1. A man with nothing. When Schindler fled west, he carried nothing but that letter and a ring made from melted gold. On it were engraved words from the Talmud, whoever saves one life, saves the world entire. The irony was cruel. A man who had once lived in luxury now slept in barns, refugee camps, and borrowed rooms. His factories were gone. His fortune gone. His influence gone. Germany didn't want him, Czechoslovakia didn't want him, Israel didn't know him yet, only the people he saved did. They sent him money when they could, they wrote letters, they testified on his behalf. Without them, he would have disappeared into poverty, or prison. 2. Failure in peace was harder for Schindler than war. He tried business again, and failed, again, and again. In Argentina, he attempted farming. It collapsed. Back in Germany, he opened small ventures, they collapsed too. The truth was simple, Schindler was never good at building profit. He was only good at spending it. When lives were at stake. He drank too much, lived chaotically, argued often. But he never denied what he had done, and never asked for praise. I didn't do it because they were Jews, he once said, I did it because they were human. 3. Recognition too late. In 1963, Israel honored him as righteous among the nations. Yad Vashem planted a tree in his name. Survivors wept as they hugged him. Children he had saved now had children of their own. More than 8,000 descendants existed because of one man's decision to stop caring about profit and start caring about people. Schindler stood silently during the ceremony. He hated speeches. But when someone asked him how he wanted to be remembered, he answered simply, as someone who tried. 4. The end of the road. Oskar Schindler died in 1974. Poor, forgotten by many, but remembered by those who mattered. At his request, he was buried in Jerusalem, the only Nazi Party member laid to rest on Mount Zion. His grave is covered in stones left by visitors, not flowers. Stones last longer, they mean, you were here. You mattered. Epilogue. The choice. Schindler was not a saint. He was not brave from the beginning. He was not pure. He was selfish, opportunistic, flawed, and that is why his story matters, because he proved something terrifying and hopeful at the same time. You don't have to be perfect to do good, you only have to choose when it mattered most. Oskar Schindler chose people over power, and the world is still alive because of it.